From Capitol News, Illinois, welcome to a special edition of Capitol Cast, Election 26. In this series, we're featuring major party candidates for statewide offices in the upcoming March 17th primaries. Today, we're talking with Rick Heidner, a Republican candidate for governor. Mr. Heidner is a businessman from Barrington Hills who is best known for his investments in the gaming industry. CNI reporters Ben Szalinski and Brenden spoke with Mr. Heidner on Friday, February 6th. Here now is that interview.
Republican candidate for governor Rick Heidner from Barrington Hills, thank you so much for joining us. Now, you're not someone with a lot of name recognition going into this race that a lot of voters had heard of before. Tell us why you decided to run and get into this race, especially going up a candidate like Darren Bailey, who has a lot of residual name recognition from his last campaign.
So there was a couple reasons, more than a couple, but a couple major reasons. When I looked at the playing field of who was running in the Republican Party, I just couldn't see anyone that had put their hat in the arena. I just couldn't see any of them beating J.B. Pritzker. And obviously, when he decided to run for a third term, I didn't really want to see him be a governor for the third time. The main reason I decided to run is because I just kept seeing so many people and so many things happening in the city and around the state that people were getting hurt. And I just didn't believe in the way that things were being handled. And the safety of all these citizens and the safety of all these people, it just made no sense to me. So that's what my heart and my soul just kept dragging me into it and saying, Rick, you have to do this. Rick, you have to do this. And that's when I decided to run.
We've heard a lot in this race about, why Governor Pritzker needs to go. Did your decision to get into this race have anything to do with his administration blocking the casino project in Tinley Park in 2019?
Well, that casino project actually was a spectacular project, and it would have brought 1,200 jobs, union jobs to build it for about 2 years. It would have brought 2,000 permanent jobs, all union jobs on the property, and probably 20,000 ancillary jobs throughout the state in the horse racing industry. It was something I was really, really proud of and something I really wanted to do. But, that's long gone. That's long gone. That was a terrible debacle. What's happened with that property since then is even more of a debacle, and really sad, really, really sad, the whole situation. You're talking about more than $50 million, probably throughout the whole 280 acres. There might have been $100 or $120 million in taxes generated there a year for the state. Obviously that's all gone. But no, it wasn't, I don't like what happened to me. I don't like what happened to me. And, I tell everybody I probably lost about half of my net worth, going through all that and being attacked, falsely accused, and things taken away for, guilty before tried. So, but it wasn't the reason. No, I told you the reason. The reason is because I just couldn't stand to see all these people getting hurt. And I didn't understand the policies that we constantly have here. They make no sense to me.
And of course, Rick, you've been more involved in business than you have been in politics over the past few decades. Your name has been associated, though, with a number of controversial figures, including some people with alleged ties to the mob and other politicians who have been charged with federal crimes. Why should voters trust you?
Well, when you say that, I do business all over the state. I work with Republicans. I work with Democrats. I don't know if you're going to get up to my political donations too, but tied to the mob. I don't exactly understand, what the connotations there are. I love to go back to the Rosemont situation. It's funny because the accusations there that somebody I do business with was doing business with somebody that was tied to the mob that was actually a shareholder of the casino. So, I go back to, nobody ever wants to listen to me, but isn't the simple question is, if those people are actually tied to the mob, how did they ever get a percentage of the casino in Rosemont? That's the part that makes no sense. So yeah, I have no clue. I have no clue. So, the Tribune was always brutal on me. They still are to this day. The Sun-Times is not very kind. They want to play their own narratives. Nobody ever wants to be wrong even though when you're 100% vindicated of something, they still want to keep regurgitating the same, stuff that's just ridiculous. I have no ties to the mob. I could tell you that for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned those campaign contributions. I know some folks have asked you about. You said at a recent forum in the Peoria area that you donated to Chicago Mayor Brenden Johnson's campaign as a favor to a friend who could help you get access to the mayor. Why is that not the same pay to play politics that has landed a number of Illinois politicians in federal prison recently?
So that's not what I said exactly. So, the words are not exactly that way. That's not what I said. A friend. First of all, I donated $100,000 to Paul Vallis. Are you aware of that? Okay, he lost. Okay, and after he lost, I have a lot of property, a lot of things. I've been trying to get a lot of business done in Chicago, and a friend of mine called me on the phone and said, Rick, he wants to retire his debt. My friend wanted to try to help him, and he asked me if I would participate. And I said, you know what, really, I was with Paul. It's not something I'd really like to do. I said, but, I've got to do business in the state for at least, in the city for 4 more years. Obviously, I'm in the gaming business. I'd love to have a conversation with him about gaming. And, I was going to be in a very small room with him and with other people that were helping him do this. He was going to say a little speech. And I thought maybe I'd have the opportunity to get an appointment with him. Just so you know, I never did, never got an appointment with him, never sat with him alone once, never got access to him, if that's what you want to call it. 1-on-1, 2-on-1, 4-on-1, 6-on-1, 8-on-1, 10-on-1. I never got any access to him. But I very, very much respect my friend. And, I did it for that reason too. And I've done that throughout my whole career. I've had aldermen or other people call me and say, this person's running Rick and he's a good friend. He's a good person. You think you could help him? And I have. And a lot of times I didn't know even who that person was, but I was trusting the friend that I had that asked me to help. And, the other part I want you to know is, Paul called me on the phone after he lost and said, I thought he was just going to thank me and say he was sorry he lost. But, he said he had debt that he couldn't retire and no one was helping him really. And I couldn't believe it because he only owed a little over $100,000. When you talk about millions and millions and millions of these guys spent, and then he's down to 105,000 or something, and he's not getting help. So I actually sent him money after he lost also. So,
And there were no strings attached to these donations, no expectation of.
Yeah, I'll take that as I'll answer the question, take it as an insult. Of course, there was no strings attached. I've never asked anybody to do anything for a donation, never once. And I've got a great story for that if you ever want to hear it, but it would take about 3 minutes.
Go for it.
So Ray Lopez called me one day and said, Rick, I'm doing my campaign and stuff, could you help me? I sent him $1,000. And I sent him $1,000, and sometimes I'm pretty sure it was, if not, it's the Tribune. It really doesn't, they're the same to me now, especially after the things that they posted. So one of the guys called me on the phone, and a reporter calls me on the phone writing an article, because I gave Ray Lopez $1,000. And he, not too long after that, actually went in for video gaming in the city of Chicago. And he wanted to know if I gave him $1,000, as like you would say, wanting him to do this for me. And I literally laughed. And I said, you think that I gave Alderman Lopez $1,000 so I could get video gaming? I'm going to get video gaming now in Chicago. I said, I mean, what a ridiculous thing. And he says, yeah, then he mentions to me something about Deborah Mell. And he says, well, you gave Deborah Mell money. And I said, yeah. He says, well, why did you give her money? And I said, why? Because Alderman Mell, is Dick Mell, is a very good friend of mine for years. We've always gotten along so well. And he called me up and asked me if I would help his daughter because she was running for alderman. So I did that for him. And knowing that it was his daughter. And so I said, to be honest with you, I said, I don't even have any clue if she's for or against gaming. I says, I never even asked her. And he says, well, I did. And I said, well, what did she say? And he said, she's totally against gaming. And I just said, oh, you got to be kidding me. I go, but yeah, I gave her the money. I never asked. I never asked Alderman Lopez. So that's I think it might have been more than 3 minutes, so I apologize. I always can't keep track of the damn time. That's the only thing about this. With this, you got 2 minutes, you got a minute and a half. Man, I'm not used to that.
Yeah, it takes some practice. I want to turn to another topic. You, in a social media post last month, you referenced Kamala Harris's winning margin in Illinois and the number of online voter registrations. And you included the comment, suspicious, isn't it? Makes you wonder what's really going on in our state. Were you implying that Harris only carried Illinois because of widespread voter fraud? And if so, what evidence do you have?
Yes, I don't even remember posting that, so I apologize. But I could tell you this, I'm 100% for in-person voting. I'm 1,000% for voter ID. I don't like mail-in ballots. I really think the integrity of voting everywhere in the United States is the most important thing we have. And it's the only thing that gives us our democracy. I've been around a long time. I've heard a lot of stories, and some of them aren't very pretty.
Right, but you did post it, and is it responsible to sow doubt in the integrity of our elections?
Well, if you're asking me about the integrity of elections, I could answer that for you. I don't believe in mailed-in ballots unless you're a soldier overseas or something like that, an elderly person in a nursing home. I don't feel at all that I'm not comfortable at all with the way that things are done here in Illinois. So there's my answer.
Kind of related, you've branded yourself a Trump Republican for governor. Obviously, the former president has lost Illinois now in 3 consecutive elections and remains particularly unpopular where you live in the suburbs. Republicans have not won a statewide race in more than a decade. A lot of the debates that you've had, that you and your fellow candidates have been focused on, who can win again. How does aligning yourself so closely with the president help you change Republicans' fortunes in Illinois, given some of those factors?
Well, I'm going to have an open door policy at my office when I become governor. Again, I've worked with the Democrats my entire career. I've worked with the Republicans. I'm very well respected through both parties, and I respect both parties. And, it seems like Illinois got favor when we had a Democratic president. It certainly seemed that way to me. And hopefully having a Republican president, I think I could have good conversations with the president about our state of Illinois. Yeah, I think that would be a positive thing. I think that would be a real positive thing. We're like-minded in things like the border. Okay, like keeping our citizens very safe. I think we're like-minded in a lot of ways. So I can't say I've agreed 1,000% with every single thing he's ever said, but I definitely voted for him all 3 times. And I think it would be a major plus rather than every single word that comes out of a governor's mouth to be, demeaning to our president. I think it would be helpful to have someone that could have a good relationship with him.
What's one area you disagree with the president on?
I'm sorry, what?
What's one area that you disagree with the president on?
Well, he actually just pretty much came around, I don't know, not more than 2 weeks ago, and he sort of, I think, changed his mind once. And I really would like to see a path for immigrants, especially the ones that have been here for a long time, that have homes and have jobs and have children and schools. And I really would like to see a path for those people to become citizens. I think that's really important. Unfortunately, because of the way we have it here, where we give zero cooperation to ICE and zero cooperation to the federal government, police and agencies, to get the worst of the worst out of here, and get the ones that are in jail and turn them over to ICE instead of releasing them back into our society. What you need to know, and I don't know if you know this or not, but an ICE agent, if you can't stand there and say, we've got 3 of them in prison here, come and get them, but instead we're going to release them, or we've got here, ICE, listen, we know they're in this apartment building, they're staying in apartment 702, and then they could very, very targeting that exact spot to get the worst of the worst out of here: killers, rapists, pedophiles, God knows what else, robbers. But instead, they're expected now to go out into the streets and out into areas, and I'll call it check a lot of people. And the second they find somebody, even if they've been here for 20 years, the second they find somebody without the right ID or the right whatever it is, passports or whatever, they're obligated by law to arrest them. And it's not up to them to say, oh, you look like a nice person, so we're going to let you go even though you're here illegally, even because you've been here for 10 years. It's not they don't have a choice. And we could have been, I'm telling you, ICE, I believe, could have got in here, been out of here in 6 to 8 weeks, got at least 90% of what they were looking for. And we wouldn't be on our 200th and something day now of having the problems that we have.
Getting into some policy areas here, a lot of Republican voters in Illinois live outside the Chicago area. Tell me why you're the right candidate for rural voters as well as farmers in the state.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was the hero for the Southern Illinois people, okay? Because I was spending $450 million on the horse racing industry. I was building a 1.25 mile track, the safest one you ever could build. It was my major, major priority. I was buying the 280 acres in Tinley Park. I was revitalizing the entire horse racing industry. Tim Carey was my partner. And if we would have accomplished, which I was taking care of the funds for that particular $450 million project, so Tim had no exposure, he would have been making money. We would be 5 years at least open. The horse racing industry would be flourishing. Tim, I'm sure, wouldn't have had the problem he has at Hawthorne Racetrack. Such a wonderful family, such a nice man, in devastating conditions right now that I could see. And the mental health community would have got $4.5 million instead of $1 for their 280 acres. I was spending $16.5 million cleaning that property on my dime, okay? I had engineers on there for 6-7 weeks and I had a package this thick to clean it up. It was $16.5 million. I was paying that. Since they sold it to the Park District, they've already given the Park District $17 million to clean it up. They didn't even get one building knocked down. They're going to have to give them now, I believe, another $17 million. And I believe they'll have to give them a third $17 million to clean it up. So, you know, they're not getting the $120 million a year out of the 280 acres. They're not getting in tax dollars. The horsemen are still completely decimated in the entire state. So I tell the people the story that I was their friend. I was their friend, you know, for the farmers, for the ranchers. We drop 200 foals a year here, less than. We used to drop 2,000. There's no horse racing industry right now in Illinois. There isn't. They go to Indiana, they go to Ohio, the people know this. They know that I've been there for them. And, you know, my kids, my family, we're in the gasoline business, we're in the fuel center business. And I understand what the farmers and what they do for the, you know, for the ethanol and the gas industry. So I love the farmers, you know. I mean, when I had the Field of Dreams, we were farming corn there on about 120 of the 190 acres. So yeah, I think they're just wonderful people.
Let's talk taxes. Every candidate running says they support lowering taxes. What taxes would you lower, and how would you fund the services that those taxes pay for? Or alternatively, what specific programs would you cut?
Well, I would definitely not want to be a sanctuary state. If we want to be a sanctuary state, I want to be a sanctuary state for our veterans, okay? If we're going to fund all this money for people, you know, why wouldn't we do it to help our veterans? You know, I guess we spent $2.5 billion on this immigration problem, housing everybody, feeding everybody, giving people cell phones, whatever they're doing. So what I said, just so we're clear, you know, on what I can do the first day I get in office, but I'd like to freeze taxes. In other words, I don't want to raise. There's no opportunity to raise any taxes till we look at every single solitary category, every single where the money's being spent, okay? And maybe we're going to find some waste, and maybe we're going to find some places like Minnesota has found. I can't tell you, but I certainly know that there's some waste. You know, when you rent a hotel for 3 months for $4 million, and there's 450 rooms that you're renting, and you put 10 people in there for 3 months and write a check to the hotel for $4 million. I think that might be a little bit of waste. Just that's one example that I personally know of. When you're giving $330,000 a month, $3.9 million a year to a hotel to house illegal immigrants, we probably could save some money there. When we turn over all those illegal criminal aliens to the federal police and get them out of our state, we're probably going to save some money there. When we give our police their authority back, and we make it so that, you know, they can't be personally sued by a criminal, so they lose their home, and we're telling them that they can't help their fellow police officers that are in the federal government, and we re-give them back their dignity and some of their power. Of course, it has to be watched. I think just like our military with President Trump has done, where we have the largest number of recruits that we've had, we could recruit then some policemen. And I don't know, and I don't know the figure for the state of Illinois, but I certainly saw the proud figure that Chicago had, that they only had 3.2 million hours last year in overtime. And how proud they were that it was down from 3.8 million or 3.6 million. So I know one thing as an employer, It's better to pay regular time than it is to pay time and a half and double time. Of course, I'm not the brightest guy in the room, but to me, it makes sense that we could save some money. We could save money, guys. And then once we save money, all right, my other thing is I want to bring business here. I want to bring business here. We're going to have to give people some tax incentives, fine. But we're only going to give them the tax incentive when they make the money and pay the tax. So if we give them back part of the tax that they generate, and I've done this in my businesses, and I could give you examples that you could call the mayor of Belvedere, and you can call the mayor of Kankakee, and you can call the mayor of Midlothian, and you can call the mayor of Hoffman Estates, and all these mayors where we built things, Hickory Hills, and we've generated tremendous amount of taxes, and we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars throughout the state, tens of millions per individual places. So what I'm trying to say is that by doing more business, you create more tax. When you create more tax, you don't have to raise tax. You save money on all these places, all these things that we could save, right? Then we get more business, we get more tax because we're getting more business, and then we can lower taxes. So I hope that made sense to you.
Yeah, if I could just follow up very quickly, that freeze, would it apply just to state level taxes, or would you also seek to apply that to local property taxes, which is another large topic? Illinois has the highest property tax rates in the country, as you know very well.
Yes. So I fight taxes. I fight real estate taxes every day of my life. And it's an unbelievable battle. And I get that one a lot. So, again, what I can do and can't do, right? So if I can, exactly what we're talking about. So there's no tax increases until we dive into every single thing, every single division of the government, and see where there's waste or see where we could save. I don't want to raise any taxes. Why I ran again, and this wasn't the biggest reason, because I'm a guy that just tell me how much I owe and I got to figure out how I'm going to pay it. All right. I'm busy working, so I'm not busy. I just need to know what my obligations are. So I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. The real estate taxes, that's what the question was, the real estate taxes?
Yeah, would your freeze of taxes, would you seek to apply that to local property taxes in addition to income tax, sales tax?
If I'm able to, yes. I want to freeze all taxes, and I want to look at everything. I just tell you, I mean, we can save a lot. We went from what, 38 billion, 38 billion when J.B. Pritzker got into office, and now our budget is 55 billion, 56 billion. So it's a lot. My one business from the time he's gotten in office today, he's raised that tax 17%. The gaming tax, they were hoping to get $300 million a year out of from my end of the type of business, and the VGTs, and they get over $1 billion, and then over $1 billion isn't enough. It's crazy. So when I watched them in the fall session, and it's like, we're going to increase this. Where can we hire this garbage fee, 45 cents for the tollways? And I never heard them talk about making money for the state. All I kept hearing was how much they want to take and how much they want to take and how much they want to take more from us. And it just doesn't resonate. Why can't we make money? Are we going to get to the point if, I want to talk about, driving somebody like Ken Griffin out of our state, with 1,100 of the highest paying jobs there are. Boeing's gone, but Ken Griffin's really the one that bothers me. And it bothers me because he was such a charitable man. He gave hundreds of millions of dollars to charities in our state. And, he took that with him. And, it's just sad. It's just sad. And, for my little thing, on out the door with a pat on the back or on the behind, J.B. Pritzker's wife buys one of his condos for half as much as he paid for it. I just found that to be terribly, I'm wondering if he's going to, buy my house for half price, if I decide to leave the state.
Getting into education here a little bit, what are your thoughts on the state's evidence-based funding formula for K-12 public schools? If it's not working, what would you want to do as governor to fund public schools in Illinois?
So, we invest a tremendous amount in our schools, and I'm disappointed in a lot of it. And, I have found, especially in these last election in Chicago, that, the school, some of the school systems have become a political party rather than, total educators, which I find to be, pretty crazy. My plan is I want to have school vouchers, and I want to hold all. There's some wonderful teachers, right? I mean, some really wonderful teachers, but I want to do school vouchers so that a parent and a child can have a choice in case they're not happy the way that their children are being taught, that they could move their child. So let's just say the number's $30,000 per student. If you want to move your child, I want to be able to take $15,000, give you a school voucher that only can go to another private school or something. It's not money you could take, and put your child where you want to. Now, I say that because to me, that child and that parent is a customer, right? And I know in all my businesses, whether it be petroleum or gaming or people that rent from me, or my gasoline customers, in the gas stations, in the fuel centers. If you don't do a great job, if they're not happy with you, if your service isn't good, they go somewhere else. And I think that'll lift everything. That'll just lift everything. And it'll really make everybody resonate to do, the absolute best that they can, and make those customers happy.
And then, of course, Illinois still has a large unfunded pension liability. A lot of labor unions say that the current Tier 2 structure for the newer employees is making it harder for the state to retain and recruit state workers. What's your plan as governor to address the pension crisis in the state?
So, I've spoken about this when I go out and speak, and I say, what we're obligated to do and pay, I don't see any way around that. People that work their whole lives and they were promised this plan, in my opinion, I feel we owe it to them, and we have to live up to those obligations, and they're incredibly painful. But hopefully, with all the money we're going to be saving on all the levels and all the new businesses that I hope to bring in, with that we could, help pay down some of the pension debt. But the biggest thing is for new people that come to work, for new people, we need to have obviously a different plan. That's the ones we really have to look at. So whatever we promise them, we have to live up to that. If we would have done this 20 years ago and 15 years ago and 10 years ago, we could have stopped the bleeding and at least paid down instead of increasing, the pension problem. I think at best that we have is just about dead even with the pensions, the pension deficit not going up is about the best that we've gotten. But it's going to take a long time. It's going to take 20 years. I hate to say people have to, everybody dies and they die off, and then when the new hires come, the age is older, the time is more, the percentage maybe have to change. It's something we really have to look at. We have to sit down and we have to negotiate it. But I don't want to take anything away from people that they were promised it. We promised it to them, and they lived up to their end of the deal. And I think we have to live up to ours.
Another big topic that's on folks' mind is energy prices. They're rising, and supply is struggling to keep up with the demand, especially in certain areas of the state, downstate, and maybe in a few years up in the Chicago region more so. What can the state do? What would you do to address that?
Well, we have to make sure our coal industry continues. We have to let that work. All right. I'm a proponent of the small nuclear little plants that they have now. People get scared of nuclear, but that's 30, 40, 50 years ago. Everything's different now. I tell people it's sort of like a car. Back in the 60s, we got 6-7 miles to a gallon. And now we get 25, 28, 26. And it's the same thing with these nuclear generators. I think they're really something that has to be looked at. The last thing I'd like to say about that is with these new AI places and these huge, I've got data centers. I've got one going across the street from me here. I'm across from the old Sears emerald green 2 million square foot building. My office is right across the street, and I'm watching them build 200 acres of data center. And they use so much energy. And I'm a believer in that they should pay more. They need to pay more for the energy than we divide it up into our residents and our other businesses. They're really creating a problem with energy, and they should have to step up and pay a higher rate.
Rick Heidner, Republican candidate for governor, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I just like to say one thing, because this is so important, because I've said this from the first day I go in office to the day I leave. I am going to every single legislator that comes to talk to me. I don't care what they want to talk about. I'm happy to talk to them, but I'm going to tell them I want term limits. On a governor, 100% for sure. I want term limits. We'll talk about the rest of it too. But no one should be a governor in the state of Illinois for more than 2 terms. No one. If we had that rule, I wouldn't have had to run.
That was Illinois businessman Rick Heidner, a Republican candidate for governor. And this has been a special edition of Capital Cast, Election 26. Capital Cast is a production of Capital News Illinois, a public affairs reporting project of the Illinois Press Foundation, with funding from the Robert R. McCormick Foundation. Continue following us for more coverage of the 2026 elections. Until next time, on behalf of the entire Capital News Illinois team, thank you for listening.